Hey guys, welcome back to my Practically Imperfect Life. I was in the middle of doing a whole bunch of the videos that are getting ready to be released about the chemistry in the kitchen curriculum, the ones where I'm going to take you through all of the lessons. And I thought, you know what? It's beautiful outside. We're in the middle of garden season. I'm wearing my chemistry garden t-shirt, which I found on Amazon and love. And I thought, why don't I take a beat and talk to you a little bit about garden plans? Because for those of you who've been around for a while, you probably know that gardening is one of my kind of passion projects. It's one of the things that I absolutely love to do. We are fortunate enough to live on 3 acres of land, most of which is not being utilized. We have an awful lot of grass. And slowly, I am trying to convert more and more of that into something that we're using, whether that's something for productivity and growing food for the home, or simply to have beautiful things growing. It's just something that I've really enjoyed. I got even more into it a couple of years ago when my daughter did a botany course from Guest Hollow, and we just both really got into all things plants. I learned a lot along the way with her, and I've been trying to incorporate those things to just help continue to improve my garden. And so I know many of you probably enjoy gardening as well, whether you live in a home with a small yard and you're limited to what you're able to do, or if you live on a big property, or maybe you're looking to get into homesteading or food production and canning and things like that, because those are the things that I have really enjoyed doing and things that I'm trying to keep bumping up our process on, trying to do more and more canning and more food preservation and more organic gardening, because I love the way it just provides something that is healthy for our family. And there's just something, I don't know, wonderful about going outside and seeing things that you have grown, especially things that you have grown from seed. So today, I just want to chat a little bit about kind of how I'm approaching planning my gardening season, some of the big projects and goals that we have, some of the things that I've kind of been doing and thinking about to get ready for this upcoming season. Now, the first place I actually started was looking at how things went last year. I take tons of photographs in the garden throughout the summer. I'll throw just a couple of different ones up here for you to show you some things. We had a lot of success in some areas, and we always have areas that we struggle with. You know, we have some crops that do really well, and we have some, like my corn last year, where a herd of deer came in and ate every single ear off every single stalk of corn. And we'll have things that do remarkable one year. Like one year I canned like 18 quarts of pickles. And then the next year I struggled to get the cucumbers to do well, and kind of identifying what's going on and what are the big problem areas. And so one of the things we dealt with pretty heavily last year were pests. Squash bugs are in our area. We garden in a zone 5B, and we're in Northeast Indiana. So squash bugs are incredibly annoying. For those of you who maybe live in slightly warmer climates, you might have vine borers, which are different than squash bugs, but they cause a lot of the similar damage. So where they kind of like get into your plant and they suck out basically all of the liquid from your plant starts to kind of desiccate and die and looks really awful. They tend to follow your vining crops. So if you plant vining crops in the same place each year, they will find them. And I've tried a couple of different ways to help kind of eliminate them or reduce them. So one of the big things is rotating where our vine crops are going to be. And another way is trying to create like a barrier. So most of our garden beds have a couple feet of gravel around them because they don't like to go around gravel. So if there's nowhere for them to hide and nest over that's near where you're going to be planting, they're often not going to make the journey to get to your plants. But I have also been doing a lot of research this year on ways that I can either prevent them or that I can better take care of them if I do see them. So a couple of things that we're going to do this year. First of all, last year we put in this garden bed. So this was our second in-ground bed that we did, a large scale in-ground bed. We had done one a few years prior. You can see here that I planted it up with a lot of different things. The first year I had it in the ground, I actually did all my vining crops there, and I had really great success and like no squash bugs. So I rotated it to the new bed this year, but we did not have the time to put the gravel path in around it last year, and the squash bugs were atrocious. They were atrocious. I tried to be diligent when the plants were young about looking for their eggs, which look like these like little red dots, and you can scrape those off, but they just decimated so many things, and I had such low productivity from my vining crops. So one thing we're looking at this year is where exactly are we going to be putting our vining crops? And by that I mean our pumpkins, our butternut squashes, we do like yellow squash, we've got zucchini, we will do watermelon, cantaloupe, things like that. Basically things that you want to kind of leave alone once they start growing. You just want to let them kind of go and do their thing, and you don't want to be picking up and moving pumpkin vines and things like that. You just want to be able to let them go. And I have like 9 different varieties of pumpkins started right now. It might be 10, but it's at least 9. And the goal is to have kind of a large pumpkin patch, not only so we have pumpkins to decorate for here, but I've also been working with some people at my church about having the school come out and be able to let the kids be able to pick pumpkins to take, and just being able to kind of donate those to them so the kids can have kind of that pumpkin patch experience without like the cost associated with it. So, I have some goals in mind. So we've been looking at the aerial view of our property and trying to find a couple of areas where we think it would be great to just till up, not worry about like weeds and things like that. Just till it up, get some fluffy soil going, and then let them go to town there. We've looked at the back of our property, which kind of butts up against a field, but there is a fence there. So that is one thought, is doing that. The downside is there are always deer that go through that cornfield, and sometimes they do come into our yard. So there's concern about whether or not they'd come through and damage it. But the second thing is that if we go through any dry spells, it would be really difficult to get water out to that area because we don't have water access nearby. And that kind of goes to another thing that we're looking at as a gardening goal this year that might help with that problem. The other thing is that I've seen a couple of gardening videos that have suggested that you get this soap brand here and you just mix it up in a spray bottle with water, and that actually spraying it right on the squash bugs kills them within minutes. And it's an option that is like a safe option. It's not going to, inject your foods with pesticides or anything like that. It's kind of a more natural way to kill these pests. So that is something that we're definitely going to be trying. Another thing we fought so hard last year, and if you live in the Midwest, you probably had issues with those awful Japanese beetles. These guys, these ones that are real shiny and they congregate on certain plants and they just eat everything. I mean, they will eat all of the blooms. Like in a day, they'll eat all the blooms off your plant. You'll come out and you'll see a whole bunch of leaves that have been chewed up and just the veins are left. And they are just so frustrating. And it is so hard to get them under control. Last year, they were like all over the place. I was constantly battling them on all of my roses. They were getting on my hibiscus plants. They leave my hydrangeas alone, which is great. But they really attacked those plants. And then my hollyhocks that I had grown perennial hollyhocks, and they were beautiful. They were beautiful until the Japanese beetles found them. And they did so much damage that actually none of the hollyhocks came back this year, which is really sad because I was hoping that those would be a great perennial to add out to the garden. And I'm restarting them this year in hopes that I can get them to, take and last year after year. But that was something that was just really frustrating. So from a preventative standpoint, we've actually started to do some work to try to prevent Japanese beetles because they spend like 9 months of the year or longer in a grub form. So if you dig into your soil and you see those white grubs, that's what's going to become a Japanese beetle. And you can spot areas on your lawn that look like they're kind of brown or not doing so well, and that usually means you have a grub infestation there. And we went through and we actually did put down a grub killer on all of our garden beds that don't have edibles. So like all of the beds around the house, all of the kind of cottage garden beds that are over by the barn, and then we put it over like very large part of our grass. Now we live, like I said, on 3 acres. I can't treat 3 acres, but we treated the areas that are closest to those beds where we have had the biggest infestation problems. And so I'm hoping that by being proactive and treating, and we're going to treat again near like the middle of May, that we actually will kill many of them while they're in the grub stage, and that will limit how many come out. Now, as far as controlling them during the year, so once they do appear, I like to alternate between spraying with neem oil. Neem oil is fairly safe for most other insects, but the thing is that you have to reapply it. It will only be there and effective for a couple of days. And then we did spray with some pesticides to kill them, but you have to watch what time of day you spray, and it's a direct contact killer, so you do have to spray it right on them. It's just one of those things where it got so bad that there was no other way to get it under control but to try that. So we're hoping that being proactive, we can prevent that problem a little bit here. So those are some things that we dealt with last year. The other thing was going through the garden, especially near the end of the season, and looking at the areas that we wanted to develop this year or that had some like gaping holes. Like for the side of my house, for example, we have been growing, I say we, it's me, I have been growing iris there for the last couple of years. It was something I transplanted there. It naturalized like crazy and everything, and they were beautiful until it started to get hot. And then they just start to look, they just don't look good most of the year. And I left them for a few years and then finally said, you know what, no, I'm done with them. So last year, after they were starting to kind of go out of bloom, I pulled all of them out of the garden. I got rid of all of them. And I did put a couple of limelight hydrangeas in the background. I planted 3 and they are coming out and starting to bloom, but they will take a couple of years to fill up. But there are several feet of bed in front of them that's completely empty. Like there's nothing there. And so it's very, very blah right now. And so kind of deciding what it is that I want to use to fill in that space. So that was something that we noticed. The other thing is that I've had kind of a long-term goal of creating a border on the edge of our property that faces the road. So if you can see here at this aerial view, we actually are right up against like a big curve. And a lot of the wind that hits our property comes from that direction. And I'd love to have a great mixed border of trees and evergreens and large shrubs and things like that that kind of create a natural barrier, not something super formal. Like I don't want to do like an arborvitae hedge or anything like that. I want things that can get to a point where they'll be just fine on their own with whatever rain we get and stuff like that. You know, there might be a couple things where I need to prune each year or, you know, give supplemental water and fertilizer to, you know, especially at the beginning. But I want to get it to a point where it's just this beautiful mixed border. And I put a few things in the ground last year, but this year, that is one of the big projects, is to get to work on that. I am not putting any more big in-ground beds in, except for the area we decided to till up for the pumpkins and the vining crops. Instead, I want to really focus on developing that border. Now, the method that I used to create my other in-ground garden beds was the no-till method. So what I did is I hoarded cardboard, specifically cardboard that didn't have a lot of color on it, didn't have a lot of like tape and labels. Anything that had tape and labels, all of that had to come off. Anything that was not going to break down had to come off all of the boxes. So no staples, no tapes, no mailing labels. It had to get stripped off. And then I laid those things out in layers on the grass, wet them down, and then covered them with topsoil. So what happens is the first year, if you're going to plant in that, I had to use my auger and actually make a hole in the cardboard to get down into the ground. But what's nice is that the cardboard smothers the grass that's underneath it and kind of works as a natural weed deterrent. So for a couple of seasons, I have not had any weed problems really in the beds that I had put in. And it was just a way to avoid having to like pull up the sod manually or renting a sod cutter. You know, you can do this method. So I have a huge pallet just stacked full of cardboard in my garage. And the goal is to get out there and get that laid down, get some topsoil ordered, and create the bed as much as we can. I don't know if we'll have enough to do like the full side because it's quite long. It's quite a big area, but we should be able to do a very good portion of it. Possibly not as like deep as I want it to be in the end, but at least the initial row. And so a big focus of my garden purchases this year are going to be things that can go in that area. So trees and evergreens. And trees and evergreens are pricey, especially if you want ones that have any kind of size to them. So while I might be able to splurge and get 1 or 2 trees that have a little more growth to them, chances are we're going to be putting a lot of things in that are, they're like in their baby stage, and giving them a couple of years to really start to put on some size and some growth. So we'll see how that goes. That's just a goal that I really have in mind for that. The other thing I really wanted to focus on this year was starting more perennials from seed. Now, so this is one of my grow towers. This one is actually quite deep, so I can fit trays 2 deep on this one. And I have this linked in my Amazon store. So if you wanted to see that, I have a section of my Amazon store that's all gardening stuff. So I have this one linked. I actually own 2 of this model. The other one isn't here. It's at my church because I run a gardening club there. And so we're actually starting some seeds there as well. I have some seeds there that are for home and ones that we're going to sell to church members to raise money for a project. So, but that one's at the school. So I do have another one of these. And then I have 3 more on this wall, a tall one and 2 shorter ones. And right now, every single inch of space on every single grow light tower is full of seed trays. Like, they're packed. They're 2 deep everywhere. I've got trays turned sideways. I have some things that had to be started in bigger pots. Those are on there too. And I have some things that are, they're still covered with the humidity dome, like this guy up here, because they were ones that you didn't want to start until about 4 weeks from your plant out date. And then I have ones that have been started since like early March. So things in all different stages of development. I have a number of things that I need to pot up and get into bigger pots, and then figure out where I'm going to put them until then. But I normally start the majority of my vegetables from seed. The only thing I really buy already kind of started are tomatoes. And that's simply because I've just not had a lot of luck getting tomato starts to do really well for me. I tried and they just did really poorly, and didn't produce as much. So those I'll go and I'll buy from Home Depot or Lowe's and put them out and they'll be fine. But everything else that we grow for food, I start inside. So broccoli, cauliflower, Brussels sprouts, artichokes. We have like 5 or 6 different varieties of peppers started. I have seeds that will get direct sown outside for corn in 2 different varieties. I have 2 different kinds of beans. I've started our winter squash, our yellow squash, our zucchini, our cucumbers. I mean, there's a bunch. The other things that will go out for food production are seed potatoes. So I have my order of seed potatoes. I ordered regular, let's see, I ordered Yukon Golds, I think, this year, and red potatoes. Those are the 2 varieties that I ordered. So those will go out and be started right in the ground. And then I did order new strawberry plants as well. So I will have new strawberries going in. So I enjoy doing that. They're very easy to start from seed. And what's great is once you make the initial investment in the things you need, like I obviously had to buy the grow light towers and I bought the initial seed starting trays, but I reuse these every single year. I just rinse out the trays at the end of the season after I've planted everything out, let them dry, stack them up, and then I store them in here until it's time to use them for the next year. So the only thing I'm really buying year after year is seed starting mix. Sometimes I have to restock my vermiculite, but I've been working through the same bag of vermiculite for like 3 years. And then my seeds, of course. The other things that I start are annual flowers and then perennials. Now this year I went really heavy on perennials, trying to start as many different things as I could that will do well in our area. I have got echinacea coming out my ears. I found so many different varieties of echinacea that were beautiful looking, and they are perennial here, and they tend to do really well here in Northeast Indiana. So I thought, well, that's a great thing. I could start a bunch of them and do some really cool, maybe like big drifts of it, especially on that border or in the cottage garden. I could do, individual ones here and there. I have started lupines, which I have never grown or planted lupines before. I have heard that they can get a little invasive at times, so I don't know. I don't know if they will like spread really naturally wherever I plant them, or if there's something that will, do on that. The seedlings look great. The seedlings look amazing. So I'm very curious to see how those do. Last year I started delphinium and foxglove, and I only did a few of each. and I really loved them, and they are coming back. So I did just a few more. I have 2 full trays of delphinium, different varieties of delphinium, and that are slightly different heights and different shades of blue. And then I have, I believe, 5 different varieties of foxglove, so different colors of foxglove. Now, foxglove and delphiniums are poisonous. The seeds are poisonous. The plants are poisonous. But my kids are older. They're not going outside and chewing on plants. And my barn cat has actually never gotten into a plant, like ever, ever. He will eat all of the little voles and all of the mice that get into my plants, which is great. That's his job. But I've never had him actually mess with any of those. So I'm hoping that those will grow up and do well, because I'd really like to create a cottage garden feel near and around our barn, especially for right now, because I do have an area in front of that. Just something that's beautiful, something that I could choose to go and do some cuttings from if I want to, but just something that will look really nice. So lots of those started. I'm attempting to grow pampas grass. It's struggling in the seedling stage, like little bits of grass are coming up, but I'm watching it closely because they just have not been like super, whoo, but they're coming along. I am starting alyssum and penstemon. So just lots of different options for perennials, because I'd love to start filling in places where I've traditionally had to buy annual flowers for, and I'd like to replace that with as many perennials as possible. I even got dianthus, perennial dianthus, and some perennial geraniums in order to try to create some more ground cover. So that way each year I can reduce the number of annuals that I need to buy to cover ground space. Like, I will still, of course, buy annuals. There's a couple of areas. I'll also throw some pictures up here where I usually will put like super petunias, and they are gorgeous. And I mean, they're just stunning. Like, I'm going to plant those there again because it's just so impactful and so beautiful. And I love that. But there's lots of other areas where I could fill in with these. And especially as I'm adding more and more garden beds, it makes sense, right, to try to fill those with perennials. Now, I can buy perennials too, here and there, but I'm really trying to get better about starting what I can start, and like giving it the time to grow up to a point where it will be, it'll be able to survive well once I put it outside, and then seeing how those things do. So it's been really fun to experiment with that. But I do also have a number of annual flowers. I started to enjoy doing cut flowers, so I have a cut flower garden area. What I have traditionally done is used 8 of my raised beds for vegetables, 4 for cut flowers, and then I have like a 30 by 40 foot bed that has been all cut flowers and dahlias and things like that too. This year, I'm actually going to give all 12 beds to food production crops, and I'm just going to use the 2 in-ground beds for cut flowers and see how that goes, and see how they do. Things that have done really, really well for me year after year: statice. Oh my gosh, statice just loves my area. It grows so amazing. I cut it and I dry it and use it for different things. I have huge bunches of it that I've been putting in vases just to enjoy some color year round. I've used it to create dried floral wreaths. And this year, I'm also starting a whole bunch of straw flower varieties for the same reason. They are great for making dried flower arrangements. So I would love to be able to have some of those to cut. And then, of course, there's mixes of things that I can cut for bouquets all throughout the summer. I'm cutting back on snapdragons a little bit. I've done a lot of those in the past, but they don't have really great vase life. Instead, I've got, and I'm just looking so that way I can name a couple of things, but I have a ton of different varieties of zinnias. I have like calendula. I have got asters going. Let's see, I have Cresspedia. I have a whole bunch of eucalyptus. Like, you can see I have some dried eucalyptus here. I dried so much eucalyptus, and I was able to put that out on displays, and I gave a bunch of it away. I have started, oh no, lavender is a perennial. So I started lavender from seeds. I can do lavender. Just tons of things. In fact, I could do a whole video showing you all of the different things that I'm starting. Let's see. So that is the plan there. Sorry, I'm trying to think of all of the different projects we have. I mentioned water, and water being an issue, because whatever genius built our house ages and ages ago, only put one faucet outside, and it's at the front of the house. So when you have garden beds all throughout your property, how do you water them? Well, I have a really extensive hose system all going to that one faucet, and it is a bit ridiculous. Now, we do have 2 barns on our property, and I know at some point somebody had animals here, which meant there had to have been a water source near the barn. Like there had to have been. So last fall, we had a plumber come out, and just for curiosity's sake, I walked through and I talked through long-term plans, like what we really like to do. Because what we really like to do is something like this picture where we take this large area in the middle and eventually put some sort of a formal greenhouse somewhere where I can actually move this whole operation outside and have water and electrical running to it and then do formal gardens around that. But I'd really like to have frost-free lines on either side of the big barn and at least another line in the backyard. So that way I could hook up like hose links or something like that and not have to have hoses that I'm constantly pulling out and putting back in and pulling out and putting back in, just having lots of access points and just make it easier for me. Now, that is a several $1,000 project to do all of that because they obviously have to trench down and they have to run lines. But they did find where there used to be water access in the barn, and what's missing is the part like the piping that will go down and tap into the pipe that's underground. Like that must have gotten damaged at some point and they closed it off. So what they quoted was also what I could do to just get that water access done. And so that is a big goal this summer, is to actually do that. At some point this summer, have them out to access that water. And at the very least, it will give us a water source that's in one of the barns, and we can get water from those and be able to more easily water things that are farther away from the house. So it's a big expense, but it's one that's going to make my life so much easier. And it's like the first step towards doing the rest of these other projects. We also have that big dead tree in the front of our yard. Oh, I've talked about this in a couple of garden tours, and it is huge. We are blessed to have huge mature trees on our property. Like we have some gorgeous trees. And if you have large trees on your property, there are expenses that come with that, because you do need to have your trees trimmed every couple of years to keep them healthy and to help avoid like big branches falling. I mean, 2 of these big trees overhang our house, so we have to have them trimmed at least every other year in order to make sure like a dead branch doesn't fall on my kitchen. But there's a tree that's up at the front of our property and it died. Like it has been slowly dying for years. I don't know why. I'm sure when we cut it down, we will be able to see. But last year it definitely like it kicked the bucket. It's gone. And it is so big. It's over $3,000 just to remove that one tree and its stump. I swear. I mean, it's kind of ridiculous, isn't it? How much things cost. So we really would like to see that gone this year. I mean, it's an eyesore. And quite frankly, it's not safe to have on the property because big storms have come through and they are starting to take down some big branches. So we really need to get it gone. Even if we can just get it cut down and we can worry about removing the stump later, the tree has got to go. So that is a big gardening goal this year, is to get that going away. Let's see, other things that I've been working on. One, I did create an organizer, and I thought this might be a great thing to share for anyone who is getting into seed starting and maybe struggling to keep track of all of the things related to seeds. Because when you read a seed packet, it's going to tell you things like how many weeks to plant it before your last frost date. It's going to tell you how deep to plant it. It'll have germination rate percentages on there. It'll give you tips on like, do you need to pot it up? Does it need no light? Does it need darkness to germinate, light to germinate? Should you have the soil at a certain temperature? There'll be all this information, right? And so you might start a bunch of seeds and be looking at those packets, and then the next year going, oh, I wonder which seeds I should get. So this is something that I decided to put together. I had been doing this all on paper, but I got tired of copying it over and over again. I thought, what if I just created like a Google Sheets document where I could keep track of my perennial, annual, and like fruit vegetable seeds, and put down the varieties that I have grown and the information, right? So like how many seeds do I have on hand so I know which ones to order. I color coded it to show how they did the prior season. So if they grew really well for me the prior season, I coded them green. If they did okay, yellow, and if they did really poorly, red. And then I could put a note in as to, why. Like my tomato seedlings did really poorly one year because the birds came and they ate them all. But they also didn't germinate at a great rate. I had one variety of straw flowers where like nothing germinated. Like they just didn't germinate. So I'm obviously not going to start those once again, because if you have nothing growing, there's something very wrong with that seed variety. I also put a note on there, like I said, of how many I had. And then what I did is I added like a little calendar into one of the sets of boxes so I could click on there and put when I needed to aim to start those seeds based on the information on the packet. So like snapdragons, for example, you need to start those like at least 3 months before you're going to plant them out, because they take a while to put on enough growth for them to go out. So you start those way early, whereas other things like zinnias, for example, they come up and they start to put on growth really fast. So typically I can start them like 4 weeks before they're going to go out, and they will be just fine. Almost all of the vegetables, 4 weeks before they're going to go out. So I put those dates in there, and then when I'm looking to see like what I needed to start on a week-to-week basis, I could just look at those ones that are coming due for that date. I also could make a note of how many seeds I started and then how many germinated, so I could see kind of what my germination rates were, what things did well for me. Like this year, for some reason, some of the varieties of snapdragons I tried to start, they just didn't germinate well. Like I would, I've had years where I think last year I planted out like almost 200 individual snapdragons. Like it was a ridiculous number of snapdragons. And this year I had 2 varieties where the germination rates were just really poor. And I've had a couple others where I've got tons of them coming up in every single cell that are all going to have to be separated out into individual plants. So it's really nice because now I have that information that next year I can very quickly go back and look at when I'm getting ready to do my seed ordering and deciding what it is I want to start. So I went ahead and I made kind of like a blank version of this template where it has like all of the titles of the columns, and it has like the calendar and things like that, but you can actually just plug in what it is that you are growing or what it is you're interested in growing. So I'll put that for free. I'll put that on my shop page. So I always link my shop page down below in the description box, and it'll just be a free one that you can get. What will happen is when you get it, it's going to basically give you something to link you to the Google Drive and ask you to make a copy. So if you don't have that set up, that's free to set up a Google account. And then basically you can make a copy, and it is a Google Sheets document, but you can export Google Sheets documents into Microsoft Excel form if you prefer to do so. I just did it on Google Sheets because lately I have been utilizing like their mobile version and things like that. So if I'm out in the garden or something, like I can just pull it up on the app of my phone and then I can play with it, and I can access it from anywhere. So if I'm at work and I'm on my lunch break, I can actually just log on to my Google account and I can mess around with that there. I don't have to necessarily be at my home computer. I have quick and easy access to it. So that's the reason why I did that. So I will add that as a free resource if that is something that you are interested in doing. So those are some of the big kind of plans for this year. And I think it's important to kind of go into the season having some key goals in mind. What are like the big things you want to focus on? Because there are so many long-term projects that I'd like to do. So many. And I can't do them all in one season. I mean, financially, I can't do them all in one season. And time-wise, I can't do them all in one season because I'm the one who enjoys doing the gardening, right? My husband, bless his heart, he is fantastic at mowing the lawn, but he could not tell you what thing is a plant that we want to have and which ones are a weed. He just enjoys the food that we grow, and he will water things if I ask him to water things, but he just doesn't get into it. My daughter enjoys plants, but she's kind of like the house plant queen, and she's super busy this summer. She'll be getting ready to go to college, and my son has no interest in plants whatsoever. So I have to look at what's my time look like, and I have to prioritize. So this year, big priorities are dead tree gone, border put in, water access, and pest control. Those are like my big 4 things. Like I really, really want to focus on those things. And anything else I happen to get done as far as garden projects, that'll just be, an extra perk. But we are, like I said, really hoping to continue to ramp up our food production. We got a second fridge and freezer last year, so that way we have more places to store frozen vegetables. I have got a whole section of this room actually down here of shelving, and it's nothing but canning products. It's my big canners, my regular canner, my pressure canner, so many mason jars. And we are still going through products that I canned last year. I mean, we still have applesauce, pie filling, pickles, tomatoes left. We dried a bunch of peppers, so we've been able to use those. I mean, just it's been nice to have those things to use all throughout the winter months. And even as we're kind of getting ready to go back into the spring, summer season, we will keep using those because we'll use them up before we're actually ready to harvest again next year. So it's just been, I don't know, it's been a lot of fun. And if canning is something that you're interested in, I can definitely try to record how I do some of the different canning processes and the different things that you can make and preserve for your family, because we've just really enjoyed it. We feel a lot healthier eating things that we have grown. And I know everything that went into that plant, and it's been grown with love. So I think it tastes better when it's been grown with love. But those are the big goals for this year, and some of the things that I have been looking at and thinking about. Okay, and that wraps up the things we have started right now and my big gardening plans for this summer. I hope that you enjoyed this. Maybe it gave you some ideas on things that you might want to do this summer as well. If you have any cool projects that you're working on or any special garden areas, let me know down below. Tell me about them. Especially if you garden in the zone 5A, 5B and have things that you've really loved growing, let me know, because maybe it's something that I will try this year as well. And thanks so much for joining me for this video. I know many of you follow me for homeschooling content, but this is, I don't know, this is just one of my passion projects. It's something that I really enjoy. It's something I like sharing about. And I look forward to kind of taking you along when we do some of these projects outside, showing you kind of what's happening, the work in progress and the result of it, and what we learn along the way. And then also kind of showing you how we're utilizing the things that we grow to feed our family, whether that's in recipes or sharing ways to preserve food going forward. But thanks so much for joining me for today's video, everybody. I'm actually gonna sign off and then turn around and go back to filming more of those chemistry videos. And I'll just mention that again here. In June, there will be a series releasing, and it is a set of tutorial videos and educational videos that go along with the chemistry in the kitchen curriculum that we had used from Guest Hollow. It was a course that both of my kids did. It's something that they quite enjoyed, learning all about how we can learn about chemistry concepts through recipes in the kitchen. And so these videos kind of go along with that curriculum. It's not a part of their curriculum, but they are aware that I am releasing these, where I will make the recipes, kind of walk you through them, and explain the chemistry that's going on with them, because I was a chemistry major. I'm obviously a little bit of a chemistry nerd. I love it. So I'm really excited. I hope that kind of helps your students who are going through that course be able to better understand the chemistry concepts, and especially working in some of the things like chemistry, math, and stuff like that, if that's something that they need to learn. So that is the big project that I have been working on, along with a couple of other releases coming very soon. I think next we will see the release of the mental health course, and then a couple of other resources to go along with some other curriculum that we have used in the past. So it's a busy time of year, but I am feeling just so blessed to be enjoying great weather, to be able to be back outside, to be able to be back to doing some of these things that I just really love doing. I don't know if you can kind of just tell it in my demeanor, but I don't know. I just feel really happy. And it's just been a wonderful season for sure. Anyways, thanks so much for joining me for today's video, everybody. I will see you in the next one. And until then, happy homeschooling, happy gardening.